So everybody has worries from time to time, but for some people, it can really start to feel pretty excessive where they're worrying most of the day, they're finding it hard to sleep at night, and they're just generally feeling really, really anxious. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 5 evidence-based strategies that I use with patients to be able to support them in reducing their worries and feeling a little bit more confident. For those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Parky. I'm a postdoctoral fellow in clinical psychology at Stanford University, and I've been studying and practicing evidence-based mental health for the better part of a decade, and I'd love to share some of that information with you. So I want to start today's conversation off with what are worries? So worries are essentially predictions about the future as to what's going to happen next. Unlike rumination, which is focused on the past, worries are focused on the future. So they're usually within the statements of what if statements, like what if I don't get to the college of my dreams? What if I don't get the job that I want? What if I miss my appointment tomorrow? And usually you can kind of see that there's an underlying sense towards the negative. So usually the prediction is that I'm not going to make my appointment tomorrow. I'm not going to get the college of my dreams. And then as a result, we feel really, really anxious. So worries can be largely broken down into either productive worries or hypothetical worries. And productive worries are worries that tend to be pretty likely, meaning that it's very probable for this worry or issue to come up in your life. It's quite near us, meaning that it's probably going to happen pretty soon. And also that it's solvable, meaning that there's actually something you can do about it. Let's say you have an appointment next week and you need childcare for your kid, otherwise you're not going to be able to make your appointment, then that's a pretty productive worry because that's something you have to deal with. There's something that is solvable in this situation, and it's pretty close to you, so you kind of have to deal with it pretty quickly. On the other hand, hypothetical worries tend to be pretty far away from us, like they're pretty distant. It's not likely to happen in the next several months or years. It's also less probable, meaning we don't know it's going to happen or not. Maybe it's pretty unlikely for it to happen. And importantly, it's not solvable, at least in the given moment. Like there's nothing we can really do about it. Like let's say you're worried that your 2-year-old, whether or not they're going to get into the Ivy League of their dreams, whether or not they're going to get into Harvard. In this case, it's pretty challenging for you to do anything, at least right now, to be able to resolve that problem. So in this case, it's kind of a hypothetical worry because there's nothing you can do. Another example could be whether or not the world's going to blow up at some point. All your great work is going to be reduced to atoms. Again, in this case, it's pretty hypothetical worry, and it probably shouldn't stop you from doing the things that are important to you. And the reason why I talk about these different types of worries is because the specific evidence-based strategies that we'll use to target these worries will depend specifically on the type of worry that you're having. So for example, with productive worries, one solution that I typically use is problem solving. And what problem solving, as the name suggests, is that really you're trying to notice that there's a problem that is solvable, that is near, that is likely to happen, and therefore I need to figure out how do I get this thing done. And in some cases, you don't really need to do anything particularly advanced. Like if you need to send an email, then you just do the thing and send the email. In other cases, it might be helpful to have more of a step-by-step process. So for example, you might start by identifying the problem and then figuring out what the solution is, which is usually just the flip side of the problem. And then you might come up with different possible solutions. So you might brainstorm non-judgmentally about the different possible solutions you can use. And then you can kind of weigh the pros and cons of each one before you decide, okay, this is the thing I want to do, and this is the first step to doing that thing. So for example, let's say you need to have childcare by Friday. So you might kind of figure out a few different possibilities. Like you might reach out to your parents, see if they can help. You might hire a babysitter. You might leave the kid alone. In all those cases, there are pros and cons to each. So you might carefully weigh what the possible solutions are and then choose the one, and then you commit to it and you do it. So for hypothetical worries where there's not particularly a readily available solution, in this case, problem solving probably wouldn't be the thing you would go for. Instead of one strategy I would actually recommend is something called worry journaling. And what worry journaling really is that essentially you're saying, okay, I'm going to take a circumscribed period of time, say 7 p.m. at night or 8 p.m. in the evening, and I'm going to spend 10 minutes writing down something that is bothering me, something that I'm really stressed about, and just let the thoughts and emotions flow onto the page. So the prompt you could use is even something like, I want you to think about something that is causing you a lot of stress, and I want you to just write about it in a stream of consciousness manner where you're just letting your thoughts and your feelings and everything down onto the page for 10 minutes. It can be a Word document, it can be a journal, And I just want you to spend that time giving yourself permission to worry. And the reason why worry journaling can work really, really well for these type of worries, I see a couple different mechanistic pathways where we see improvements in worries. One is that worry journaling allows us to process our emotions. It allows us to answer the question of what if this catastrophic thing happens? What if this thing happens? And then as a result, we tend to be able to almost like sit with that worry and be able to process it rather than kind of keep it as a nebulous thing in our mind. And the other piece is that it really helps with the sort of exposure. It's almost like an exposure practice where we're sitting with anxiety, we're allowing ourselves to really tolerate the distress. And then as a result, once our brain recognizes that there's not necessarily an inherent danger, we notice a slight reduction in our distress. So a third evidence-based strategy that I find very helpful with patients is something called the behavioral experiment, where the behavioral experiment is essentially testing the what if questions, because we often have these what if questions that we negatively predict, like what if I ask that girl out? She's gonna say no. Or what if I try out that new bubble tea flavor? I'm not gonna like it, so I should probably stick with the thing that I'm certain about. And as a result, we kind of stay with this sense of allergy to uncertainty, and we don't develop the sense of resilience to the unknown, to uncertainty, to unfamiliarity. And the behavioral experiment says, wait a minute, I made this negative prediction as to what is gonna happen, but really, I have no idea what is gonna happen. And therefore, why don't I try it out? Why don't I try that new bubble tea flavor out? Why don't I try talking to that girl to see if she's interested? And the great thing about the behavioral experiment, it's that it's actually a win-win. Either it's a positive outcome where you're thinking, oh, like I actually really like that bubble tea flavor, or that girl actually seemed pretty interested in me, or you realize you were more resilient than you thought when the negative outcome happens. Oh, I'm still alive. I can just go back to my regular bubble tea flavor or to the regular restaurant I always go to. I lived and I can deal with uncertainty. So the fourth strategy is something called mindfulness, where mindfulness is really about a non-judgmental observance of everything that's kind of going on in our lives, where mindfulness is about the present moment. We're not fixated in the future, we're not focused on the past, we're right here in the here and now. And it's about practicing letting go of worries, to be able to recognize that worries are simply thoughts that we randomly have throughout our day, and they're not necessarily something we have to entertain, or that it necessarily means something really important and something significant that we have to attend to. So the next time you have lots of worries, I almost encourage you to create some psychological distance by saying, I'm noticing a lot of worries right now. So you're creating and saying, these are the worries, and this is where I'm at. You're creating sort of psychological distance. Another way you can do that is by treating these worries as almost like leaves on a stream, visualizing them as clouds in the sky, and see if you can just watch them pass along, pass by without being engaged in it. And that practice of mindfulness then allows us to create, again, the psychological distance where the thoughts, the worries, they have a lot less power over us, and we're able to let them go with ease and change our relationship with the worries itself. So the fifth and final evidence-based way to reduce worries and reduce anxiety is through relaxation exercises, which are a way to kind of reduce our fight or flight response, reduce the anxiety, so hopefully the worries also swell down with it. And the idea behind relaxation exercise is that most people have probably practiced it in one way, shape, or form. Some people do it through diaphragmatic breathing, so they're inhaling through their nose, really getting the air to swell up their belly, their diaphragm, and then exhaling through the mouth. And in terms of the actual rhythm, this is totally up to you. It's kind of whatever feels natural as a pulse in terms of how many counts you want to inhale and exhale for. Usually I find as a general principle, exhaling can be a little bit longer than the inhale. So you might inhale for 4 counts, hold for a couple counts, and then exhale for 6 or 8 counts. And then you can kind of repeat that at the sort of frequency that feels right for you to reduce the anxiety. Other strategies that can be helpful would be guided imagery, where essentially you are imagining yourself into a different place that is more comfortable and relaxing. It can be your own private garden, it can be by the seashore, it can be at a national park. It doesn't really matter. It's whatever your safe space is, and that gets you out of your mind and into a place that actually feels really comfortable for you. Or any other relaxation exercises that work for you. Any of them can be great as long as you can be regular and consistent with it. So there's 5 evidence-based strategies that you can use to reduce your worries. And if you found this video helpful, I encourage you to subscribe, as well as to leave a comment down below as to what strategies you usually find the most helpful to manage your anxieties and worries. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Take care.